Fox 9's Paul Blume is with us now to talk about developments in a 13-year-old mystery that goes back to two ruby slippers snatched, stolen from a museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Judy Garland Museum in her hometown. Do we have resolution in the case? Well, let's see what Paul Blume has to say. He is with us now. Thanks again for the time. This has to be, you tackle and embrace all these stories, but this is a good one. I enjoyed this one. It's kind of different. It's not life or death, obviously, but it has a lot of people intrigued. What exactly did we learn at today's briefing?
Well, this was kind of fun to cover today, Dan. So what we know is the shoes are back. The FBI has the shoes. Mystery solved. Sort of. What we don't know is where they've been for the last 13 years, and we don't know who actually stole them. Authorities wanted to put the shoes, the slippers, if you will, out in front of the public. They actually need the public's help here. They got wind of a scheme that started unfolding, we understand, in the last year or so, an attempt to bilk basically the insurance company that now owns these slippers. The local police force in Grand Rapids was like, oh my God, this goes a little bit beyond our little town here. Let's get the FBI involved. So they've gotten involved. They conducted some sort of sting operation, we understand, at a home in Minneapolis this summer. They recovered the 80-year-old ruby red slippers. They confirmed they're the ruby red slippers by sending them to the Smithsonian in Washington, comparing them to the shoes that are on display there. Several pairs were actually made for the movie. Confirmed they are those shoes, but announced no arrests, announced they need the public's help, announced, there have been search warrants and suspects identified, but nobody, we got no mug shots today, no wind of anybody under arrest. So we have to assume at this point they have the shoes. They just don't have anybody in custody in terms of who took them. And these things have massive value. There's an author there who's all things ruby shoes and Hollywood memorabilia from The Wizard of Oz. He says at auction, if these shoes ever were to reach auction, $2 to $5 million, no problem.
Man.
And depending on who's in the room that day or on the phone for that auction, those things could get up to $7 million.
Whoa. We were thinking earlier $1 million plus. I didn't realize it was going to be quite that rarefied air. That is remarkable. This is one of 4 remaining authentic shoes that she wore, right? I should say pairs of shoes that ruby slippers allegedly that she wore, right? We're down to 4 that we seem to think are still out there somewhere that we can authenticate.
Correct. 4 of them. I mentioned the one at the Smithsonian. Right. There's a pair bought by some Hollywood types that are on display, I guess, at the Academy of Motion Pictures out in Hollywood. There's one pair owned by a private investor that just are not on display. And then this pair, shoes worn off and on by stunt doubles, by Judy Garland, by Dorothy, shoes danced in, shoes walked in. We don't know exactly which one, where these Minnesota shoes kind of appear in the movie. We know they're not the ones she clicks together. Those are famous, and those have otherwise been identified as the ones that Hollywood types bought. But these, we assume, were worn in some way, shape, or form by somebody connected to this film, and obviously have great meaning as they were stolen in some break and grab overnight crime up in Grand Rapids, 13 years ago now. That's
devastating. See, I didn't realize that we know these are for a fact not the ones that she clicks together, man, because those are I guess if you really want one pair, that's it, right? And how in the hell how do they authenticate that that's the pair where she, clicked her heels together? How can they do that?
I don't know. They said the curators at the museum are able to do that based on wear and tear, comparing it to other authentic, the pair of authentic ones they know they have in their possession. The shoe does have Judy Garland's name stitched in it. The police chief out of Grand Rapids was down in Minneapolis today as part of this briefing. He said one of the issues they've run into over the years is reproductions, as they've sort of searched for the mysterious, so where are these shoes? But the National American History folks at the Smithsonian in D.C. Confirmed they are the shoes based on, again, fabric, wear and tear, and then the elements they see in the shoes that they have on display there. But it's pretty nuts talking to the police chief about some of the leads they tracked down over the years. He talked about sending investigators to a diner in Missouri where there were a pair of ruby red slippers nailed onto a wall. There was a woman who came forward who said she watched her boyfriend dump them into an iron ore pit up in northern Minnesota. He said the only problem with that is we have too many iron ore pits to drain or dive into. I do know divers at one point dove into one quarry up there. So, I mean, this was heavy stuff, and people wanted to find these shoes. And now today they surfaced mysteriously in the hands of the FBI here in town.
It sounds as if, do we know exactly when they recovered the shoes, A, and B, they're not giving, it doesn't sound like they're giving you much about, I've heard it described as a sting operation that got to that. Are they filling in many of the details of how they actually found the shoes?
No, I mean, it was really strange, and they started this news conference. I mean, we're talking the FBI in charge of, special agent in charge of Minnesota. We have the U.S. attorney down from North Dakota. He's here in town, the police chief. They all alluded to this, that, we can't really give you much today. And as I said, they're really appealing to the public. Yeah. So, obviously it's getting a ton of coverage. I saw that author I spoke to today on CNN today. So I know that, they're hoping to get some tips. But yeah, they spoke about this sting operation this summer. They get the shoes, they identify suspects, they interview suspects, they, execute other search warrants. But yeah, no other real connection other than this. It came to them as a scheme. An insurance company now owns the shoes because of the payout from the theft, 13 years ago. Someone tries to bilk them for money. The FBI gets involved. And we get to hear this summer.
Well, what's odd is generally in a sting operation, the sting itself, the by definition, the person at the other end of it is the person responsible. That's the purpose of the sting, and you got them on tape or you got them on video, or this is the person responsible. It almost sounds like there's a third party in here somehow. Is that what I'm interpreting?
I would think your guess is as good as mine. There, yeah, it's the house. Who owns the house? Who did you sting? Right. Who did you go in? They wouldn't even take questions today, Dan. They actually show up. We got a 2-minute warning. They came in, they spoke. The special agent in charge, kind of a Hollywood-like unveiling under this, velvet cloth. Here are the shoes, and then they walked out of the room. Yeah, they didn't take any media questions. So it was kind of the mystery really does continue.
Yeah.
There were 2 prongs to this investigation, as the authorities described today. One was to get the shoes, check. The other was to hold the people responsible and prosecute them. That remains on the to-do list.
I'm hoping, because like you said, when I heard the announcement earlier today, and there's going to be a big presser, I'm thinking we're going to have everything. Where they're going to tell a remarkable story of how they recovered them and who's responsible for having taken them. But this is, there's still clearly a lot of story left to tell, and maybe eventually it'll be a really cool story. But now I think in some ways it ended up delivering less than it seemed to promise at the front end. Fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they put out a bulletin last night embargoing this news until 6 a.m., morning show time. And then, we all show up. I mean, you should have seen the bank of cameras at this place, Hollywood types, production companies. This was intense. And there was this great unveil. Don't get me wrong. That was quite a scene, right? I mean, this is one of Hollywood's most iconic, pieces of memorabilia out there. The police chief talking about how they really have the power of, this enduring sense of belief, what those shoes mean to moviegoers for generations. But in the end, who did it?
Who did it? That's what we're still looking for.
There. So we kind of left begging for more, and stay tuned. But I really think, to be honest, seeing what the FBI is asking for here, I think they need some help. I think they need some help in connecting the dots. I mean, they don't put on this dog and pony show if they're close to closing this case on their own. They need someone to come forward and say, I saw those, a year ago, or I know Joe was bragging about X. I think they need some help. And today's media event, circus that it turned into, was all about that.
Well, I should remind folks that the theft took place in August 2005, and they were, at that time, this particular pair of a size 5.5 slippers, I believe, were on loan to the museum from the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids from a memorabilia collector in Hollywood named Michael Shaw. And that's how they got there in the first place. And, of course, I think most people know that Garland was born in Grand Rapids, lived there until very, very early. I think she lived there like 4 or 5 years, and then her family, of course, moved to Los Angeles. The rest is history. But so the museum, I mean, that's why it was such an embarrassing thing for them. They were just on loan for them for a while, but they were actually supposed to be. They belonged to this memorabilia collector named Michael Shaw.
Correct. And now, as I talked about the ownership, there's a payout on the theft eventually, and I think that's why the insurance company technically now owns the shoes, and Mr. Shaw is kind of out of the picture in that regard. But yeah, they were on loan, and there's some great mystery about the museum situation. Something about it's the one night that like the manager forgets to turn on the security system, and their cameras aren't working, and the emergency exit is sort of dislodged.
Whoa.
And yeah, the thieves come in. In fact, for years, there are rumors that it was a quote inside job, somehow connected either to the folks who run it or work there. Obviously that question remains out there today, just given that we didn't get any clarity in any other direction. But yeah, it was quite a mystery. And they only came in, that's all they took. They didn't go after a piece of the Yellow Brick Road or any of the other Judy Garland memorabilia. They specifically targeted, smashed the glass case the shoes were in, and made off with them that night. And 13 years now, they've been underground. And I think I mentioned, I know you asked, but they were recovered kind of in the last month. They described like a July, August seizure. So the FBI's been sitting on them for a few weeks now.
I'll leave you with this thought. Emailer Gabriel, I think, has nailed it. This whole story is tailor-made for a Coen Brothers film eventually. And I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, we just got to get a resolution. Or maybe they could fill in their own gaps and make it even more creative as they are wont to do. But yeah, it sort of does. Grand Rapids, and as you say, the oddities of that night, security system, funny, not on that night. And I think wasn't there also like one red sequin left on the floor? And that was, as you say, the only item that was stolen were the shoes. Yeah,
the sequin and then some shattered glass on the floor.
Shattered glass, that's it.
That's
well, I'll look forward.
I can see the tight shot now, Dan, in that Coen Brothers film, right?
No doubt.
The symbolism and take it off from there. Absolutely.
Let them let their imaginations run wild. Maybe I'll try to write the screenplay early and get in on it with the Coen Brothers. Great stuff as always, sir. We appreciate it. We will be watching I'm assuming you got to be on this 5, 6, 7, 10, 9.
Yeah, Dan, we're on every half hour basically through the night. Tune in. I'm bound to be there.
It's a beautiful thing. Thanks for helping us out as always, man. I appreciate it.
You got it, Dan. Thank you.
Fox 9's Paul Blume helping us out on a very controversial story. With, in some ways, now I think more questions than there were before, even though we were all kind of led to believe that this was going to be finally the resolution of this kind of riveting, if not all that important, mystery that's gone on forever. The better part of, 13 years, I believe. Going back to August of 2005.